Hey guys, RVA Returners back again with our next installment in our Meta Deck Tech series. Today we're going to be looking at a deck that, while it's extremely simple, it is extremely explosive and can sometimes just steamroll you right out of a game. And of course I'm talking about Scions of the 7th Dawn. Alright, so the list we're looking at here consists of 24 forwards, 5 summons, 3 monsters, and 18 backups. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down each section piece by piece, starting with forwards. Alright guys, we're going to start by breaking down the Scion forwards, and we're just going to go down the line. So we're going to start with Urianger. Urianger's primary function in the deck is to recur your monsters, and in this case that's Dragon. Dragon is going to be your primary piece of removal. It's what you're going to do to get rid of a lot of the problem forwards, your Yuris, your Wolves, your Dadalumas. And just being able to recycle those and have that threat throughout the game is super important. All right, next up we have Neeta. Neeta is one of the primary aggressors in the deck. She's a great, just kind of investment to what you get kind of forward. She only costs 2, and on average she's going to be a 10 to 12k body with an excellent combat effect that puts half of her power onto a dull forward. So there's a lot that you can put on top of that to really just start getting your opponent's forwards off the board. Right, next up is Papalemo. This is a card that Neeta's already a great card. This is one that makes Neeta even better. The fact that he searches for Neeta is huge, and Papalemo's kind of the middle car in the value train, as it were. Typically you're using Minfilia to search for Papalemo and in turn search for Neeta, and that's where these explosive turns start. And the fact that he buffs the damage that's dealt by Neeta to a forward, that is, by 2,000 means she can start swinging above the way above the curve, more than she normally can, and it adds to that damage ability that she has when she attacks. So these two are the kind of the backbone of getting those explosive turns started. All right, next up we have the newest addition, and this is the 3CP Thancred. Thancred's kind of your finisher. You want to kind of play this guy when you're ready to just swing for game, and just because of the fact that when he comes into play, he's going to dull forward. And he has some added bonuses. If you only use category 14 backups to play him, then he'll come in with a 2,000 power buff. He'll have haste and first strike. The haste really isn't that important because he'll probably already have that from Alize anyway. But that first strike and the 2,000 power buff is pretty huge. And just, you'll drop this guy, you'll get something out of the way, you'll swing, they'll probably be forced to block, he'll have first strike, so it won't matter. Next up, we have the 4CP Thancred. You want to see this guy in certain matchups. The fact that he will be a 9k if you control another Scion, which most likely you will. And while he's dull, the damage dealt to him is reduced by 2,000, which is huge when you're going up against those Dadaluma Cactar decks, a lot of those Crystal Chronicles decks. So he's important. He's one you want to see in certain matchups. Sometimes you may just want to hold off on him and play the 3CP Thancred just to win the game. Just depends on the matchup. The last Scion forward is probably the most critical one. She is the one that kind of brings those explosive turns together, like going Papalemo Neeta into Y'shtola. It's such a quick turnaround in the game. The fact that she can't just be straight broken by summons or abilities that don't deal damage. She'll have Brave, which means she can stick back on defense. And if you control 5 other Scions, she's putting 8k onto something else, which more times than not, when Y'shtola comes to attack, she's going to 2 for 1. And that just, again, allows you to push more damage through quicker, because that's the kind of the name of the game here. You'll notice, other than Urianger and the 3CP Thancred, all of these other Scion forwards come in at 3 copies apiece because you want to see them and you want to set up those explosive turns. Now we're going to talk about the non-Scion forwards in the deck. Kind of a disclaimer here before we go over ours. There's a lot of options here, and I'll touch on that a little bit at the end. So we'll just go over the ones that I put in the deck, and we'll talk about some of the other options at the end. All right, so first up we have 3 copies of Alua. There's nothing that really hasn't been said about this card other than the fact that, if you're playing purple cards, you may want to have 3 of her in the deck because she becomes just an early threat that is pretty sticky and hard to deal with, and her S ability can just win you a game. And it's great in this deck, especially if you have a turn where they destroy your Alize. You still have access to give all of your guys haste by using Shoal. All right, next up we have Wool. It goes back to that, what we always say here on the podcast, that if you're playing yellow cards and forwards, you want to see Wool. Wool is just a card that can, just really kind of brings the deck together as well, because he eliminates EX bursts, which is fine, especially when you always want to be the aggressor. So getting EX burst just off the table is huge, and the fact that he can buff Neeta, giving Neeta a 2k buff in Brave is huge when she's attacking. So it's Wool. We all know what that card does. And then lastly, I'm running 3 copies of the Opus V Cecil. I think this card is just absolutely fantastic in the mirror match, as well as other decks that are running more low to the ground stuff, because of the fact that he flips on a burst on turns 2 or 3. Against a lot of decks, you're going to miss a lot of their key targets. Whereas in the mirror match, Cecil's going to flip on the second point of damage, and now you've just killed their Neeta. So, and I think this card is just a good big body, and it's another one that can win you the game just off of its ability. You could put it into play, kill something, use its S ability, kill something else, and then just swing through with the rest of your guys. All right, now we're going to take a look at our summon package. Very small, very simple. We're running 2 copies of the Opus 4 Hecaton Chair and 3 copies of the Opus 6 Ramu. Hecaton Chair is there to allow a lot of those 2-for-1s, especially with Neeta and Y'shtola. Just a great battle trick, especially if you have Wall on the field to buff those forwards. We all know how that card works and how effective it can be out of nowhere. The other one is Ramu. Ramu could easily be one of the best lightning summons in the game. Just being able to put 7,000 on something in conjunction with, again, with Y'shtola attacking, being able to give something haste, being able to dull something just to move it out of the way, and also being able to destroy monsters. Getting Leax and Cactars out of the way is super important in this meta, and that's why you're straight up running 3 copies of that. Every mode on the card is useful and can just push through to win you a game. All right, next up we have monsters. We're using a very small monster package consisting of 3 dragons. You're going to get a lot of value out of these with having Urianger in the deck. It's really there to take care of some of the more problematic forwards. Your Y'shtolas, your Dotalumas, your Wolves. Just being able to have an answer for that on the field can really change the way your opponent has to play. And then when they do pull the trigger on it, you're there to just remove it before it becomes a threat. All right, guys, we're going to finish up here by looking at the backup line. One of the things that Scions has going for it is that they have a very clean, consistent backup line. And the lists are usually comprised of 3 copies of each backup in the deck. So we'll just kind of go down the line here. We'll start with Alphanod. Alphanod is just, your 2 CP lightning backup. The fact that you're going to be able to use its ability to help with the damage done by Neeta and Y'shtola allows them to take out larger targets, and is always constantly a threat to put some sort of ping damage onto something. Also good at taking out the Opus 4 Vikings just by itself. Next up we have Krile. Krile was a huge addition in Opus 6, just being a 2 CP Earth backup, but also being one that was job Scion in the 7th Dawn. Its ability, not nearly as relevant right now. The fact that, cards like Leviathan, Strago, the bounce effects aren't really getting played right now. But when those start to come back, Scions is already kind of proofed against it. Next up is one of the more important backups in the deck, and that's Louisoix. Being able to search for Alize or Alphanod is absolutely critical to building your backup line. More so Alize than Alphanod. But just being able to have access to a searcher for one of the most, if not the most important card in the deck is critical. Next up, speaking of which, we're going right into Alize. Alize is the card that makes the deck work, that keeps the deck relevant and makes the deck explosive. All of your Scion forwards having haste presents such a threat and a clock. The fact that you can just start playing guys and just get right into their face every turn is huge. All right, next up we have Miner. Miner is important for recurring those backups. Alize does typically get a target on her back when from cards like the 3 CP Hecaton Chair. And being able to have Miner or access to Miner allows you to recycle those if they do get destroyed. That way you can keep up your pressure. And also allows you to recur forwards as they get destroyed. Being able to get back Y'shtolas, being able to get back Aluas, being able to get back Yeetas, Papalemos, things like that to just keep your value trains going. And lastly is Minfilia. This, it's a great card from top to bottom. It searches your deck for a Scion forward, and it also has a ability for Earth and Tap. You can just break a forward as long as you control 5 Scions of the 7th Dawn, including itself. So you've got access to more just clean, easy removal, and it allows you to play another one and search for the Scion that you need. Also, the fact that its EX burst is huge. And guys, that is Scions of the 7th Dawn. Very straightforward list, very simple, but synergizes very, very well and can be extremely explosive. Definitely a deck that if you're not prepared for, it will just take you to the cleaners. One of the things I want to touch on that I mentioned while we were going over the forwards, that the non-Scion choices can change depending on the direction of the meta. You'll see a lot of them running Dotalumas. You'll see a lot of lists running Amon. You'll see some that are running Alua, some that aren't, some that run 2 walls, some that are running Noctis. So there's a lot of variance there. Same thing with the Opus VII Thancred. You'll see lists that run anywhere from 1 to 3. So you just kind of flavor it based on your local meta, but the core of the deck stays exactly the same. So give it a shot. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for watching as always.